Good evening, everyone. Welcome in the Dutch 3P Café. And we have a special guest tonight, and that's Ghana. Of how do I pronounce your name? Ghana?
Right, Chana, yeah,
Ghana,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Chana Studley.
Mm-hmm.
And Ghana and I had a conversation in December after I joined your summit,
Mm-hmm.
7 day summit about mental health, or what was the title?
Beyond
Oh, yeah,
diagnosis,
beyond
healthy.
diagnosis. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I asked some questions, and Hannah suggested that she would join me to explain some things to Dutch people, and I said, and then I invited her in the Dutch 3P cafe, and here she is.
Yay.
Yeah, Hannah, I think you can better introduce yourself because
Okay.
your English is much better than mine. So you can say about what you want to say about yourself, and then you go to speak a little about uh, what did we just say? I'm already loose about
Whatever comes.
yeah, whatever comes in. And she and Ghana would like to have some questions, so you can we
Mm-hmm.
can do it all together. So
Mm-hmm. Good.
Ghana, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, hi everybody. So nice to be with you. And yeah, I was just remembering how I was invited to come to the Netherlands about 2 years ago, and sadly it was October 7th, and I live in Israel, and so the airports were closed and all the flights were cancelled, so I wasn't able to make it in person. But yes, it reminded me I was on the screen in the beautiful hotel there, so hopefully one day I'll be able to come back again in person and enjoy. Because I think the last time I was in Amsterdam was probably 1980 something, maybe when I was a student. I was a punk rocker when I was in college, and my punk rock band were touring around Europe, and I have a picture of us in Amsterdam walking by the canals. It's fond memories. Um, yeah, so I love questions. So I'm happy to chat, but I really like answering questions because I want this to be helpful and useful to you guys. So, if anybody has questions, please, I'm happy and grateful to answer those. So, just to introduce myself, I'm English. I grew up in England, and I just really quick. I experienced a lot of violence in my early 20s, and the it was the 1980s. So I think PTSD had only just been recognized as a diagnosis at the time. So I didn't get any help, any treatment. I remember at the time, I basically was told to, have a cup of tea, go home and walk it off. You know, that was, that was the total help I ever got. And at the beginning anyway. And so I did go home, and I remember after the second time I was mugged when three men beat me up and left me on a piece of waste ground. I remember the first day I tried to leave the house after that event. And I was living in a big Victorian house in Manchester. And I went to the front door, and I remember hearing this voice very loud in my head, and it said, "Last time you left the house, you almost died." And I was like it was almost like someone was talking to me. And I had to go out. I needed food, or I needed to go to the police station or something. I don't remember now. And then a couple of days later, I needed to go out again. And this voice said, like, 6 days ago when you went out the house, they tried to kill you. And so this kind of brought a habit of thinking. And every time I would try to go out the house, a voice would remind me how scary and dangerous the world is. And you better be careful. And it was like a roommate moved into my head, and this voice was talking, telling me, don't go out. It's very scary. It's very dangerous. And I didn't know anything about mental health or um, self-help or anything at the time. I was just finished being a student and I was just trying to start my life working in the entertainment business. And so the best I could do was tell myself to shut up. And it got pretty bad. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, I was really, really not functioning very well at all in that time. And I was scared to tell anybody that I wasn't doing well. And they probably would call it self-harm today, but I would punch the wall in anger. Like I bruised my hands a lot. So I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. And this voice was going in my head most of the day and most of the night. And it was hard to shut it up. I couldn't function. And so I would started screaming at myself, shut up, like this, when I was alone in my apartment. And if I did make it out, which became less and less often, I would scream it in my head. And this went on for at least a year. And then I moved to London and was attacked again. And that time it got pretty bad really quickly that time. But the funny thing, I only remember this recently, when I first came across the three principles, which was about 10 years ago now. And I joined a couple of Facebook groups. And I don't know how now, but I started a conversation in Facebook Messenger with a woman in Ireland who I didn't know who she was. And I told her this story about how I would scream at myself to shut up. And she said to me, that was your wisdom. That was your wisdom helping you survive. And I was like, really? She said, yeah. And I think it was one of the first conversations I had with a three principles person where I started to shift and see it all differently. And I'd love to tell you that woman's name, but it's one of those strange Irish names and I can't pronounce it. But this past October, I was in Spain for the Viva event, the Three Principles event in Spain. And I saw her name on a name tag. So I asked one of the organizers, is she here? And he's like, yeah. So I got to meet her and I got to thank her because um, an, it was a big turning point for me. It really showed me that principles had something to offer, something different than all the other things I'd done in the last, 20, 30 years. And it was so nice to sit down with her and tell her this story. And I just saw the look on her face. She says, I kind of remember that. I said, you really turned things around for me. And it's like, so I just want to tell that story because you never know when you say something to someone, the effect it can have on them. That one phrase, that was your wisdom helping you survive. I mean, I don't recommend it now. It was kind of brutal, screaming at yourself to shut up, but I didn't know what else to do. So over the years between that, then the early 80s and meeting the principles, I did a lot. I really got interested in mental health and transformational work, and I did all kinds of things from A Course in Miracles and the Enneagram and lots of expressive writing, lots of meditation. And I was desperately seeking to fix whatever was wrong inside of me. I didn't really know what it was. I just knew I never felt okay. I was always scared. I probably had social anxiety. I was very nervous being around groups of people. I didn't know what to say. I was afraid you would think I was stupid. I was wearing the wrong clothes. I'd say the wrong thing, really scared of making a mistake. And it was just easier to go home. Um, but I would push myself. Um, and then the chronic pain started. I started having all this back pain and neck pain and stomach issues and skin issues and all kinds of physical things started happening. But I never made the connection. I just thought, I'm one of those people who gets lots of problems like allergies and, something wrong with my back. And I had all these injuries, so that's why my neck was always, so painful because where it was broken. And I just kind of made the best of it. And I was lucky enough to have, we were talking earlier that I used to live in Los Angeles where I worked in the film business for a long time. And I did special effects in movies. And, so I was having like this big career, but my back was constantly in pain. I was paralyzed several times and rushed from movie film sets to the emergency room because I couldn't move my legs. That happened a couple of times. And I would get a massage and I would do my writing and and then I would get myself back together again. Okay, I'm going to try again, try again. I was always trying again. And then finally, when I found the principles, a friend of mine told me about it. And I remember we were in a cafe and she told me about, she couldn't really explain it. She just said, I think you'll like it. Because she knew I'd been searching for a long time for answers. And so I came home and I sat right here and I Googled Sydney Banks. I think it was in YouTube, and I was listening to a video. And I just had this feeling of this is it. Because I loved it when he said you don't have to do anything. Because I'd spent the last 20, 30 years doing, with the meditation and the writing and the going on silent retreats and the reading the spiritual books and the gurus and when I lived in California, we used to call ourselves, we're searching kind of people, and we were proud of being searching kind of people. And and now looking back, I think I wasn't very good at it because, I was always searching. And it was kind of adds to the frustration, I think, because when you think your happiness is over there, your well-being is over there, you just got to meditate a bit more or read a bit more or find the right guru, then you'll get, to that to find your well-being. It was exhausting. And and I was a coach all through this time, and I got really good at what I called thought hygiene. My thinking had to be hygienic because I knew what dark, miserable thinking can do. It takes you down and you don't want to be here anymore. And I didn't want to go back to that. So I got very good at keeping my thinking positive and clean, right? No bad thoughts, no scary thoughts, not allowed. Write about it, meditate it, get rid of it, be positive. And that's what I would share with my clients. I would share with them how to, ignore their thinking, how to pretend it's not happening, how to rise above it, be positive, all that kind of stuff. So when I heard Sydney Banks saying that we don't actually have to do anything, that you're not broken, that you don't need fixing, all this stuff, I was like, wow. It was so exciting to me. It was such a relief. And I got so excited about it. I went to London to do the One Thought course with Aaron Turner. Back then it was live. You had to go there. So I had to fly backwards and forwards many times from Jerusalem, where I live now, to London. And so there was the expense of the course, there was the expense of flying backwards and forwards, and it was spending lots of money when you're traveling. And when I was there, I wasn't working here, so I needed to save some money. And at the time, I had been going to the chiropractor every month for 25 years. Like whenever I'd move anywhere, most people are like, where's the post office? Where's the cinema? I'm like, where's the chiropractor? Right? I always needed the chiropractor to fix my back and my neck. And I thought, I feel okay, so maybe I'll cancel my monthly chiropractic appointment. And it was always more than a month because my back would hurt all the time and I'd need to go for emergency appointments. So I did this course and I had to fly backwards and forwards many times. So I had to be there for the beginning, the middle, the end, and for the graduation. And and at the end of the course, I noticed that I didn't have any pain. And I remember sitting here going, that's weird, like my back feels okay. And I haven't had any treatment. And I've been flying and sitting in airports and sleeping on, sofas and friends' beds and, like all the kind of situations where my back would have gotten really, hurting and upset. And my stomach and my skin and everything was okay. And I started to think, when did it start? When did I last have, a lot of pain? And it certainly wasn't in the last 6 months since I'd been traveling and learning. And I thought, it was before that. I hadn't had a big pain flare up since I came across the three principles. So I didn't do anything. I didn't change anything. In fact, I stopped doing. And I realized now that my body had been screaming at me to get my attention, to get me out of my head, out of that anxiety and all that perfectionism and all that worry, to get me to be present. And so as I learned about the three principles and I became more present, I wasn't so worried or so anxious. My body didn't need to hurt anymore. So it's the same body. I still have the same history of injuries, or I have one leg longer than the other. It's still, but now it doesn't hurt. Right? And and so I was so fascinated by this that I really got curious and I started reading a lot and doing research and wrote the books and started working with people with chronic pain. And so that's kind of been, my journey into the three principles. And I'm really grateful for it because that got me, people know me now as, talking about the connection with the mind and the body. And the more I understand it, the more I see how fascinating it is, how I've learned the language of my body. Because I would say I've been pain-free for about 10 years now, but I can still get, the occasional, my back could still, hurt a tiny bit, or my neck can get a little bit stiff. But I see it now as a signal. It's like a message from my brain and my body are telling me that maybe I'm a little bit tired or stressed or something might be bothering me. And I catch it now really quickly, so it doesn't have to turn into anything big anymore. I haven't, I think I went to the chiropractor once in the last 10 years, and it's because I tripped and fell or something. So that has been absolutely amazing. It's been life-changing for me. And then more recently, I've been helping people more with mental health issues, and I wrote the book Beyond Diagnosis, a year or a half ago. And then this mental health summit that I just did, because I find it absolutely fascinating that doctors want to give people medication when they've only spoken to them for like 5 minutes sometimes. And this medication it can cause a lot of harm and people can get addicted to it. And it's very hard for them to come off of the medication. And there's very little research done on long-term use. And there's I've heard so many horrible stories of people having terrible withdrawal symptoms and it really badly affecting them. And it really breaks my heart because when you know how the mind works and you know that we're only ever feeling our thinking, if when they were struggling, with some grief maybe or some, maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe they're, people, we all have to deal with stuff. It could be angry teenagers, it could be losing a job, it can be, losing a parent or, a partner, dealing with all kinds of difficulties. And if we don't understand that we're just feeling our thinking and it's moving through all the time, and you go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't understand either, then you're coming home with a prescription for a medicine. And I had an insight not long ago, because what I learned about the medicine is all it does is it turns the volume down on the thinking. It doesn't cure anything because we know there's nothing wrong. But medicine doesn't cure anything. The best it does is it like in English we say blunt, it like makes the thinking quieter so people aren't so distressed by their thinking. That's really all that's happening, which, some people are glad for that relief. But I had an insight about this and I thought, it can't change the content of your thinking, right? The medicine can't change what I'm thinking. It just changes the volume of what I'm thinking. So if my thinking is saying things like, you're fat, you're ugly, you're a loser, you're never going to succeed, and it's so painful you can't handle it, take the medicine. You're fat, you're ugly, you're a loser, you're never, right? It's saying the same thing, which is maybe I can ignore it now because it's much quieter. Whereas the three principles are teaching us that thinking is an illusion. It's not true. I don't have to listen to it. It's like some crazy person talking, or let's say you've got little kids, you just tune it out. You don't listen to everything they say. And that has been one of the many blessings for me of this understanding is I've lost interest in so much of my thinking. I can still get an odd, weird thought. I can still get, a sad thought or a criminal thought. And I've learned to ignore it now or just watch it go by, or it just doesn't interest me anymore. so it doesn't turn into anything difficult. So my back doesn't need to get hurting anymore. And I just see it's like, life is like this. Life is bumpy sometimes. And learning how to ride those waves of moods and thoughts and stuff that happens has been, you know, it's such a blessing and such a gift. So I'm gonna pause there and see if anybody has any questions. Yeah. Mm.
Well, Hala, I don't have a question. I would like to share something
Mm.
because I coached a girl about 16 years old. 16 years old. She had diagnosed with anorexia, uh,
Mm.
eating disorder,
Mm.
and she gets some antidepressiva. How do you call that in English? Medicine against her depression.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I coached her for 3 years or something like that, and in that 3 years she noticed she took the medicine, but she didn't notice any difference in her thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to her about the three principles, and after 2 years or something like that, she decided on her own in to stop the medicine,
Mm-hmm.
not with the doctor, just
Mm.
with her parents. She said,
Yeah.
"I want to quit." I
Mm-hmm.
also talked a little bit about her, about the medicine and what it wasn't for any use,
Mm-hmm.
but and she had some, how do you call that, side effects
Yeah.
weren't so nice.
Yeah.
She couldn't focus, she
Yeah.
was tired, and then she stopped, quit the medicine, and she get focused, she get more energy.
Mm-hmm.
The thoughts she handled different because I talked about her or with her about the principles, and she just quit on her own with the medicine and get a totally different life.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a miracle.
Yeah.
And so maybe I have a question, because could it be that, hey, you talk about the side effects of the consequences from withdrawal, stopping with the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that that also is a thought created experience?
Mm. It's a good question. So, as you know, I'm not a doctor, but even there's plenty of doctors here who wouldn't be able to answer that question either. So what I've learned from, I've talked to a lot of a lot of people now who are going through withdrawal, and I would say, first of all, to anybody, um, it's something you have to be very careful with. Um, the the best way is to go slowly. Never stop taking it immediately, just, cold turkey, as we say, because the brain has gotten used to getting this chemical. And even if you don't want it anymore, to suddenly stop it can be like a shock to the brain. So yeah, so some people have to go so slowly, it can take a couple of years, if they've been on a high dose for many years. So I just would say that be careful and get some advice. But to answer your question, I think it's both, because there is a physical element to this. And this is something when I wrote my book about hormones, which I think is translated into Dutch
Hmm.
very well, is in Dutch, yes. So so and this was something I remember, I can't remember why I was in a conversation with Jack Pransky about this. And we were talking about how, because he was saying to me, but hormones are not made of thought. They're made of chemicals. Right? Now we say everything is thought, but you have to put like that into a context that that like my bones are made of calcium, right? My skin, I know I'm not a scientist, but there's keratin in my hair, there's calcium in your teeth, you know, our bodies are made of chemicals. Um, and they do have processes that they're doing with or without my permission. My stomach is digesting my lunch right now, and I didn't ask it to. Thank God it's doing it well. Um, But but I only know that through the gift of thought. Like there's a famous quote from George Pransky. I don't know if you ever heard him tell this story, but he was explaining this to a client, and the client said to him, "So you're saying this table is a mirage?" Right? And George said, "It's a real mirage." Right? Is it made of thinking? Well, it's made of your thinking, right? Now, we could get very spooky and spiritual in quantum physics and say, is the table really here? Am I really here if I'm not thinking about it? I mean, if that is entertaining for you to think about, that's fine. But what I know about the chemicals in the brain is that they do something. It's not what most people think. Most people think they're taking these pills to cure something or to balance the chemicals. I mean, that is not true. And there's no evidence of that. And the doctors know that that's not what's happening. They're changing the chemicals in the brain, which seem to make people have quieter thinking. But I also know there are people who take the same medicine and it doesn't work. And there's some people who take the medicine, it does work. So what's the difference between those two people? You could say, well, everybody's body works differently. Yeah, maybe. But I think it also depends on our awareness and our mood and our state of mind. Because even an antibiotic will be different with someone who's in a good mood and someone's in a low mood. But I do know there's such a thing that we're going to call chemical anxiety. Because when you mess with the chemicals in the brain, I know people who've experienced awful anxiety and they're okay. They understand it's their thinking. They understand the principles even. They can understand. But when the brain is adjusting to the withdrawal, it almost produces what I'm going to call chemical anxiety. And I've talked to them very carefully about this, and it feels different. Like, because the kind of anxiety we all think of is like worry, like ruminating, thinking, oh, what if, da, da, da. And the chemical anxiety seems to be more like, like intense. It's hard to make because I haven't experienced it. So I'm just kind of repeating what people have told me. But I've worked with clients coming off of medication, and around the days when they step down the lower dose, they often get maybe 2 or 3 days or a week of really extreme anxiety. And then it passes because the brain got used to the new level. And then they go back to their regular anxiety or the regular state of mind. And it's predictable. It happens every time they step down to the lower dose. So it's connected to the brain adjusting. So I know there's two kinds of anxiety. There's the kind of anxiety where we are, feeling our thinking and catastrophizing, worrying, remembering painful memories or something. And then there's the kind of anxiety where the chemicals in the brain are adjusting. And why it produces anxiety and not hunger or something else, I don't know.
Mm.
That's what happens. That's what I'd say about it. But even that we're experiencing with the gift of thought.
Yes.
Right? So it's never not thought. There are no exceptions to how we experience things. It's always through the gift of thought, which can show up as not just words, but as sensations and images and all that stuff. But I would say there could be two different reasons why we're experiencing the anxiety in that situation. Does that make sense?
Yes. I would love to have an experiment or an medical examine or something like that to examine if you quit with the medicine, you withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
The one group gets a doctor
Yeah,
who believes in a uh, steps in the
yeah.
withdrawal, and the other groups has a doctor in front of them. He said, "No, don't matter, no worries." I was curious
Yeah, I would love to
about the
do
results.
like that because I remember I was talking to Dr. Bill Pettit about this one time, and he gave me a great analogy. He said, when people go to the doctor for help in a situation like whether it's anorexia or OCD, PTSD, whatever mental health they're struggling with. He said it's like their mind is going 100 miles an hour, right? Zoom, 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 zoom. So he said it's like a car. So let's say you're putting your car, your foot on the accelerator, going very, very fast. The medicine is like putting on the brakes. Now, this foot is still on the accelerator. So you can drive a car with one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake. It's not good for the car, but you can kind of drive like that, with an automatic. So what happens is when people take off the medicine, right, this foot is still on the accelerator. So if you haven't done anything to address the thinking, the state of mind, the anxiety, the depression, then this is still a problem. So that's really a lot of the work I'm doing now is as people are coming off of the medicine, helping them understand the principles helps them to take their foot off the accelerator. So like you were saying with your client, it's like then you're free of both of it.
Yes.
And people can come back to their innate well-being and trust their resilience and, and see that there was nothing wrong in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. See. So, happy to talk about the physical stuff or the mental health stuff or anything else about the principles.
Mm.
In fact, I can tell you, I have quite a few clients right now with OCD. Or I'd say a diagnosis of OCD. They don't have it. They have a diagnosis of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And what's been fascinating to me is often someone who has that diagnosis, that they get obsessive about a very specific thing. And the first woman I worked with this kind of OCD, she was obsessed with technology. And the technology was the most, it was she knew more about Microsoft than some of the people who work for Microsoft because she was so, obsessed with it. And then I've met a lady, a Jewish lady. So in Judaism, we keep kosher. So in kosher, we don't mix meat and milk, right? We keep our meat and our milk separate. And she is obsessed with this because she keeps thinking she's made a mistake. She keeps thinking that maybe she put milk into the chicken soup. And she's had this for 10 years. She knows she didn't put milk in the chicken soup, but what if she did? Right? And so she has to throw out the chicken soup. And her husband is so sick of her throwing away all the food because she can't trust her thinking. And she doesn't want to take the risk of feeding the wrong food to her children or her families, so she has to throw it out. Every day she's throwing food out because she can't trust her thinking. But it's the same as the lady with the technology. The lady with the technology is, throwing away a phone or ruining, laptops and stuff because she can't trust that the updates are okay. And then I've got another lady in Australia who right now she's having amazing insights because for a long time now, her obsession was she mentally ill? Which is a fascinating one because she's obsessively thinking about having obsessive thinking. And we were laughing about this morning. So what she would do is she started Googling the symptoms of psychosis and schizophrenia. And she's learning about hallucinations and hearing voices. And she's like, keeps checking her eyesight and keeps checking, what's that voice? Was it my husband or was I hearing? Oh my God. And she's driving herself crazy from all the information she's learning. And so what I noticed that was common between all of these things, I had another guy who told me that every day he has to stand on one foot and recite the names of his ex-girlfriends or they will die. That was his obsession, which in a way he knew that wasn't true, but what if they died? So he better do it, right? So what's common with all of these situations is not, the problem isn't the milk in the chicken or the girlfriends are going to die or the technology. It's the obsessiveness. That's what I'm helping them with, is trying to see that the fact that it's obsessive doesn't matter what it's about, because we could fix all those situations for those people. We could get, Microsoft to fix this, and, a rabbi could come and fix the kosher problem, and we could get her send her to college and get a medical degree in psychiatry if that's what she wants. But she could get, she could become a psychiatrist. It wouldn't fix her problem, because the problem isn't in the worry about mental illness. The problem is in her listening to the thinking. The problem isn't about the milk in the chicken. It's her, that she's listening to that thinking. So that's why I did the Beyond Diagnosis book, because I wanted coaches to see that you don't have to be a specialist in these areas. You don't have to know about mental health diagnoses. You just have to have really good grounding in the principles, and you can help anyone. Because it's not about the specifics. Like I have a couple of clients who are billionaires and they do real estate. I know nothing about business and stocks and shares and proxy fights and, courts and judges and, liens on loans and stuff, this money stuff. I know nothing about it. But I know that they're driving themselves crazy with their thinking. And I think that to me is one of the most, I've been called a three principles purist. I think it was meant as an insult. I take it as a compliment because I see now that there are no exceptions. It doesn't matter what the topic is. If you're a coach and someone brings a problem to you, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you don't have experience with that specific thing, because that's not the problem. The problem is how we're processing the thinking, how we're misunderstanding. Like Sydney Banks said, that there need only be one generic mental illness, a misunderstanding of the role of thought. Because when you understand how thought works and how that works with consciousness and divine mind, then there's freedom. So the lady with who was frightened she had psychosis, the last couple of days she's been messaging me and saying, I'm just realizing I gave my thinking too much credit. And when we were talking this morning, she was saying, I thought I could protect myself from psychosis if I thought about it a lot. And then she burst out laughing because she realized how funny that was. You're going to think yourself into protecting yourself from thinking too much. And luckily, and I know when people are getting well and they're getting it because she was laughing about it. And I think for me, that's a really great sign that the principles in action is when people start to lighten up and hold it lightly and start to find even her own behavior funny. And I've had that experience when I see that my thinking is so ridiculous, I start to laugh. So.
Oh, Diana raised her hand.
Yeah. Hi, Diana.
Yes, hi. Nice to see you again. Saw you when I was in Nunspeet when you were
Yeah.
back home.
Yeah.
But what you're just saying about the thoughts and the people with the OCD, but isn't that what we all do? And not so excessively as the people with OCD, is we believe our own thought trains,
Yeah.
how big or small they are, and we get lost in them.
Yeah. Yeah. You make an excellent point, which is why I don't get scared when someone tells me they have a mental health diagnosis, because I know it's just another version of what we all do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It might have got a bit more extreme, or they've gone to, the behaviors have become more excessive or something. But yeah, you're right. It's what we all do. So am I mentally ill, and or are we all just doing the best we can, with the thinking we have, right?
Yeah. And sometimes we believe too much what we think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We trust our thinking.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Which
Right.
isn't logical at all.
Yeah. Because I came up with an analogy recently. I think it's like, imagine you had small children to put to bed, like you're babysitting, or you had grandkids, your own kids babysitting. You put this small child to bed, and then you go off and I don't know, watch TV, or you do something. And then the child starts screaming, "There's a monster! There's a monster!" Right? Now, as the adult, if you run in there with a frying pan and a carving knife, I'll get him. Where is he? Right? You're going to freak that child out.
Yeah.
Right? The adult thinks that there's a monster. Oh my gosh, there must be. Right? You're on the floor, like under the bed, like, where is he? I'll get him. Right? So
Right.
trying to do something about our thinking is like going after the monster under the bed. Why would I need to do anything about my thinking unless I think it's real?
Yeah.
But when we see it's an illusion, that's like fighting a shadow. Oh, but he might bite me. Oh, yeah, no, it's a shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's when I was collecting the stories for Beyond Diagnosis, most of the stories people sent me were of anxiety and depression, because that's, as a coach, that's the kind of clients that most people get. People with psychosis and schizophrenia do not go to coaches, right? Because paranoia is like one of the symptoms of I don't like the word symptoms, but you know what I mean. One of the characteristics of that diagnosis. So they are not asking for help. People with psychosis and schizophrenia sadly end up in the emergency room because of the extreme behavior, and then they get caught up in the system with the medications and the treatments. But I have worked with one lady who I'm pretty certain would have gotten a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And she's exactly what you just pointed to. She was experiencing thinking, but the thinking was so extreme. Her only problem was that she was believing this extreme thinking. And for her, I had met her socially a couple of times, and she seemed a bit, a character, an interesting person. And she heard that I'd been a trauma counselor, so she asked me if I could help her with trauma, and I was like, yeah, sure. And when she came to me for the first time, it was like she was a different person. She was angry. She was pacing up. She couldn't sit down. She was moving around. She was like, and she kept saying, I have to tell you what's going on, but I can't tell you. I have to tell you, but I can't tell you. I said, you don't have to tell me anything. I can help you without you needing to tell me anything about the trauma. And she said, yeah, but you need to know. But if I tell you, they will come and get you. I'm like thinking, who are they? Because at this point, I'm just thinking it's a trauma client. And then she started slowly, over a few sessions, she started to tell me that the people from the dark web, were out to get her because she'd overheard a conversation sometime, and that they'd come into her house and done surgery on her in the middle of the night. Now, you're all thinking like I did, but didn't your husband wake up? How come you didn't notice? But my intuition said, go along with it for a little bit, because I wanted her to trust me. Because if I said to her, nah, that's ridiculous. How could they have done surgery on you in the middle of the night and you didn't wake up, or your husband or your kids didn't wake up? Then she wouldn't have trusted me, and she would have gone somewhere else, or back into her dark world. I don't know. So I would go, wow, really? you know? Because maybe they did. And she said, I can show you scars. And she was about to undress in the middle of my living room. And I said, no, 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 it's okay. Because I thought, if there is a scar, it might be something she did to herself. It could be a surgery from when she was a kid. Or there's no scar. So I don't need to see it, because that's not how I'm helping her. I'm helping her with her thinking. And then she was convinced that they were poisoning her children, and they were coming into the house and laying poison around because there were ants here and there weren't ants there. I was thinking, sometimes I have ants there and not ants here. So I didn't challenge her stories. And I kept just treating her, not like a doctor, but I mean, like being with her like she's a normal human being who's just got a bit too caught up in her thinking. And she started to understand what I was pointing to. And she did get a little bit better. And she would say to me, like, she still believed they were after her, but she started realizing she didn't have to think about them so much. Why was she giving them so much time of her in her mind, in her day? And she started to get a little bit more relaxed. Sadly, her mother got sick and she had to go visit or something, so I wasn't able to continue. But I could imagine or hope that if she got more and more relaxed about it, then if she got into a better state of mind, she would eventually see that this thinking, this extreme thinking, was something she didn't have to listen to anymore. And eventually, I could see someone getting free of that. But it needs patience, it needs understanding. And obviously that's an extreme situation. But when I see that it can work with what they call, the worst illnesses or the most extreme situations, then that means it can work with anything. There are no exceptions. The principles are how everything works. And that's another reason why I wanted to write the book, because I wanted, if you're a coach and you have a client and they say, yeah, but my situation's different. My situation is really bad. They go, oh, well, look, on page 22, here's someone who recovered from schizophrenia. Oh, look, here's someone who recovered from anorexia. Oh, look, here's someone who recovered from CPTSD, right? Like, bring it on. What have you got? I'll show you how you can get better. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi,
Nice
Natasha.
to meet you personal.
Yes.
I don't really have a question, but maybe I want to hear your reflection.
Yeah.
I know a lot of coaches, and in my experience, they have a big grounding in the principles.
Mhm.
But when they have pain in their body, then
Mhm.
they forgot everything. I consider myself also. I am also a 3P coach, and sometimes when I have pain in my body, I forget. I lost everything. I forgot everything about the principles.
Yeah.
Do you know why? Why it is? I'm not the only one. I know.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes, I've experienced that too. And I think one of the things I've noticed from talking to a lot of people is I think what we do is we categorize our thinking, right? So, you know the word categorize, like to organize our thinking. So I'll tell you how I explain it to my clients. I say, imagine we've got 3 boxes, right? 3 options. And in box number 1, we've got what I call thinky thoughts. Thinky thoughts are like, feed the cat, walk the dog, oh, Hannah's going to be speaking in 10 minutes. I better get a cup of coffee, sit down, get ready to put my Zoom on, blah, 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 blah. All the chitty chatty stuff we have all day long, right? So that's thinky thoughts. And then in the middle box, we've got what I call kind of thinking, right? We've all heard ourselves say, I know it's my thinking, but, right? The famous line. I know it's my thinking, but the traffic is annoying me. If it wasn't traffic, then I wouldn't be frustrated. My boss drives me crazy. I know it's my thinking about my boss, but he's really an idiot. Right? So it's kind of like, it's kind of thinking. We know it's happening in our minds, but we're still kind of thinking something on the outside is causing it, right? And then over here, we've got what I call the real box. And everybody has something in the real box. And for a lot of people, pain is in the real box. Because I wasn't thinking anything. I woke up in pain, or and it can be anxiety. Like I've realized that what's in one person's real box is not going to make sense to anybody else, right? It doesn't have to make sense. But I've noticed pain, and pain was in my real box for a very long time because it hurts. And when it's hurting a lot and it's hurting for a long time, it's hard to think straight, it's hard to function. And so it seems, it's understandable that we forget. So where I've come to with pain now is I just see pain as a signal. And there's two kinds of, for this purpose, there's two kinds of pain. There's a pain which doctors call acute pain, which is like, say you cut your finger or you break your leg, or you're having a baby, a surgery. It's pain is coming because something happened to the body and it happened like now. And even that is also a signal because you could have say twist your ankle and your brain will go, oh, it's probably best you don't keep walking. So it sends pain into your ankle so that you'll take your weight off your ankle and go get help. But let's say you're a soldier and you're fighting in combat and you could get a really bad wound and you might not feel pain because the brain thinks, not a good time to stop, right? Right. And it will almost wait until you get to, till they get to safety, to the hospital, and then they'll feel the pain. So the interesting thing about that is pain can be switched on and off, which is a very good thing to know, right? And it's happening in the brain, not actually in the body. The brain is assessing whether it's a good idea to give you pain or not. And then the other kind of pain is chronic pain. And chronic pain is not coming from something organic or physical, like an injury or a surgery. It's coming from the brain is generating that pain, not for safety reasons, but for, I believe, what I would say is now is to get our attention. Because I was always told that the pain in my back or, was because, I have one leg slightly longer than the other, so it puts my pelvis on an angle, which puts my lower back under strain. And so that's why I had the pain. Well, like I said, I still have one leg longer than the other. My pelvis is still slightly slanted and I don't have pain 99.9% of the time anymore. But I can like get, like, oh, my shoulders are tight, let's say. Like, oh, yeah, because I've been, I didn't get much sleep last night, or I was, traveling or worried about something, and it's a message now. It's telling me, slow down, get some rest, take care of yourself, right? And if I don't understand that message, I'm not going to take care of myself, and I'm going to be going to the acupuncturist and the homeopath and the chiropractor or the surgery and trying to fix something that wasn't broken. It was just a message. So when I'm telling clients about the boxes, the punchline is there are no boxes, right? Because the same process that I'm thinking pain is real is the same process that I'm thinking get a cup of coffee because the Zoom's going to start in 10 minutes. It's still a thought going through my mind. Now, is there a physical sensation of pain? Yeah, but what if when you understand its purpose, it makes it tolerable, so my nervous system feels a little bit better, and if my nervous system feels a little bit better, it can go away. Like giving birth, if aliens came from outer space and saw a woman giving birth, they'd think she was dying, right? Because they don't understand what's happening. But when it's, when the mother knows that she's having this terrible pain in order to give birth to her beloved little baby, it makes it tolerable somehow, right? I remember my mother saying that to me. She says, as soon as I saw your brother, I forgot all about the pain. So when we understand something, I think, was it Nietzsche or Viktor Frankl? One of them said, a man can tolerate anything if he knows why. right? So when you understand that pain has a purpose, whether it's to, that you need antibiotics or you need surgery for, an injury, or, and I can give you an example. Like I said, I would call myself pain-free now for 10 years, but occasionally I've had little moments of it. And the moment I really saw this was after October 7th, like when I was supposed to be there with you guys. And I'd say about a week later, that week was horrible here. We were hearing things. We didn't know what was happening. Maybe it was going to happen again. Were we in danger? And everybody here was watching the news all the time, all day. And I was probably checking the news probably every 10, 15 minutes at some points because it was changing so much and we were hearing things. And I'd say about a week after in the beginning of the, of the 7th, my back started hurting. And my skin started getting itchy. And my stomach was getting a little bit bubbly. And as soon as I noticed it, I was like, I'm watching too much news. Stop it. Now, obviously, I needed to be informed, and I was. I just didn't need to be watching it every 10 minutes, So I cut back on the amount of news I was watching. Pain went away. It didn't turn into anything, like it used to. Like I used to be lying on the floor every 4 to 6 weeks for 25 years. I had IBS, I had allergies, asthma, eczema, all these physical things. And I that's why I say now, I see it as my body was screaming at me. So now that I've learned the language of my body, like in that situation where I was watching the news, and I don't judge myself for it because it was a horrendous situation. Nobody knew what was happening. But as soon as I got that awareness, thank God for this understanding, I was able to take care of myself. And I still was, informed. I knew what was happening. I just didn't need to do it obsessively. And so I cut back and it went away. So I think, sorry, I've been waffling. Go back to your question or your comment is, like I said, I think it's when we see an exception, that things in the real box, but that's real. Like people would like say, well, I woke up with an anxiety attack or it came out of nowhere. I'm like, I'm guessing they were, it was building up for a while. Because when we get honest, well, was I scrolling on my phone all night? Was I Googling till 3 o'clock in the morning? Was I fighting with my partner? Was I, have I been holding on to a resentment or anger for the last couple of weeks? And because I was right, I don't recognize it as, like, I'll be honest with you, I was around the principles for probably 3 years before I started to realize just how anxious I used to be. I didn't even realize it was anxiety. No wonder my back was screaming at me. I just thought I was right and you were all wrong. So the pain was coming from a combination of misunderstanding, a nervous system that was like completely revved up. And now it's pretty quiet most of the time. Yeah.
What pops up that in the real box,
Yeah.
we think sometimes that there is even an I, that I am real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you see that is also a thought,
Yes.
maybe
Yeah.
there are no boxes and there are no,
Yeah.
there is no experience of pain.
Well, see, I don't know if I would go that far because pain serves a purpose. Do we want to stop soon? Or I can keep talking all night if you you tell me when we should stop.
You can go on.
Okay, go on. Okay. There are people who are born, it's very rare, but there's a genetic condition where people are born with no pain. Now, if you're in pain right now, that might sound like heaven. Oh, really? They don't feel any pain, but they don't feel anything. It's like their pain sensors, there's something not working with the pain sensors in the body. And they don't last very long. They die probably by the time they're teenagers. Because think about when you're a kid and you get a cut, you eat something. If you don't know you have a temperature, you don't know that you've got, a cut on the back of your arm falling out of a tree, it gets infected. And then that infection gets into your blood because you're not cleaning it, you're not getting antibiotics, you're not doing something. And they get seriously ill really quickly as children, and children's bodies are, not as strong. And most people with that condition die by the time they're teenagers. So as horrible as pain can be, and I don't wish to, dismiss anybody's suffering with, things like cancer and surgeries and stuff. But it's actually a blessing. And I've had a lot of clients say to me, but didn't Sydney Banks die of cancer? And yes, he did. And I don't know if you know this, but it was brain cancer. Sydney Banks died of brain cancer. So I talked to Dickon Bessinger about this one time. And in fact, I talked to Bill Pettit about it at first, and Bill didn't want to talk about it. I think it was too upsetting for him. But Dickon sat with me and we talked about it. And he said, yeah. He said, but I remember when visiting Sid in the hospital, he said, first of all, the nurses couldn't believe who this guy was, because he was so nice and kind. And I could imagine, I mean, I never met him, but I could imagine him being very gracious and graceful, even in a lot of pain. And Dickens said that his pain, he treated it like an inconvenience. It wasn't the most problematic thing for him at the time, even at the end. He said he was more worried about how we were going to, continue learning about the principles. How we, I think he still has at least one book that's never been published. So there's, I'll fight about that one with the family, I think. So there were other things on his mind that he was more concerned about than the pain. And I found that with some clients, I've had some clients with fibromyalgia, and I don't know why, but fibromyalgia seems to take longer to go away, and chronic fatigue. I don't know why, and they don't know. But some of these people have had incredible insights, fall in love with the principles, are amazing, and their body still hurts, but they lost interest in it. And that to me is amazing. I think that's like the client with the OCD that I was talking to this morning. She's lost interest in scaring herself about her thinking. It's becoming boring to her now. Like, why would you do that? And that's like the few times I've had a bit of pain over the last few years, I just don't find it that interesting. And because I don't find it interesting, my nervous system doesn't get more revved up. And so it has a chance to calm down, and it goes away pretty quickly. So it depends how the meaning we're making out of it. If I think the pain means something. Now, if it means we need to go to the doctor, then go to the doctor, right? I'm not saying to ignore it. But if you've been told there's nothing physically wrong, and there's nothing wrong, and this pain always happens, on Sunday nights because on Monday morning you have to go to work and deal with your boss, or it always happens, when you come back from vacation, or it happens only down one side of your body, something weird, then I would say it's a message telling you to be more present. Not you, but, people. No, I know it's what it's saying to me, come out of your head and be more present, and it usually goes away.
Thank you.
That's a nice thing to remember, being more present.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you for your presence.
Pleasure.
Present for us.
Yes.
And well, maybe we see you another time, because you said you could talk a lot more about this.
Yeah. See, that's why I love questions. You ask me a question and I can go on and on and on.
I think we all love to listen to you. And well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remember, the Very Well book is in Dutch, I know.
Yes.
And the Beyond Diagnosis book is being translated into Spanish right now, but I don't think that would work for you guys. But I'm writing my next book right now. So the next one is going to be about the overdiagnosis of ADHD.
Oh, okay.
It's
Interesting.
set in a school in America, but it's about drug company corruption, so it's going to be a bit controversial. We'll see. And then so that one's written. I'm just kind of starting to do the editing stuff now. And then the next one I'm just starting now is about memory. And it's so fascinating because memory is involved with trauma, with dementia, with one of my characters is going to be in a courtroom, so that the eyewitness, can you rely on the eyewitness testimony? Because, you know, she's relying on her memory. Like, what if she's in a low mood when she remembers? You know, like mood and consciousness with memory is a fascinating thing. And I'm learning lots of research right now, and it's absolutely fascinating. So I'm just started writing that one, which I'm excited about.
In Holland, we have a guy who wrote. No, does he wrote a book? I don't know. The guy without a memory, something like that, or yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And he was 21 when he got a disease where he lost his memory.
Oh, wow.
So he lost everything he knew. He didn't know who his parents was. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know how to put his shoes on. He didn't know anything.
Wow.
And
But
that
you could still play the piano.
but yeah, he
Really?
still played the piano, yeah.
Wow.
And now he's talking to groups about his experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes I talk to him through Messenger or something like that, because I think what he's pointing to is so related to what the principles are pointing to, but he's experiencing it. And I always say to people, well, there's only this moment. What happened isn't here anymore, so you
Yes.
can't forget that. But
Right.
we can't forget that. So
Right.
it pops up.
Yeah. I see, like when she kept talking about memory, it's fascinating. It's like
Yeah.
it's so many areas of our lives.
Oh, maybe you think it's interesting to me to talk to him, because
Yeah.
he's
Yeah. Yeah.
very. I can contact you with
Yeah.
him
Please, that would be
like
great.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so look out for more books. There's
Yeah.
at least 3 more coming. Because the last one, I need to write a book about addictions. That was because right from the beginning I had the idea for 6 books. So I've done 3 of them. So I've got 3 more to do.
Wow.
Well, we look forward to it.
Yeah, good.
Well, have a nice time this evening, and thank you
Yeah,
so
pleasure.
much for being here,
Yeah.
for
All
your
right.
time.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye
Nice
bye.
to
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.